It just feels like yesterday when the United States and Iran were on the brink of a war. If you go back to the beginning of the year in January, we started with the hashtag World War III on Twitter. And suddenly everyone was like, oh, are US and Iran going to go for a war? Then in February, we hosted Trump, 100,000 people at the Motera Stadium. And then 8 months of sitting home. And now we have the election in the United States. The red and the blue stripes are out, as you can see. And it's time for the election in the United States of America. Now, what are the pollsters saying? What are the experts saying? What are the forecasts saying? The forecasts have given a victory to Joe Biden already, former vice president under the Obama regime. Already, many have pronounced him as the next president of United States. The polls, even the popular sites like 538.com, it has given Biden a 90% chance. Of the 40,000 simulations they have done, the electoral simulations they have done, they see Biden winning 90 times out of 100. For Trump, it's 10. Many are predicting actually for Trump even not to get the swing states. He will also lose them. But then we also had those analyses in 2016. In 2016, we had everyone saying that Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president of the United States of America. It did not happen. So we'll keep the polls aside for now. What are the Indian Americans doing right now? Well, for one, Indian Americans have traditionally been democratic. They vote, 93% of them rather voted for Obama in 2008. By 2016, by the time Trump was contesting the elections, 16% of them voted for Donald Trump. But given the brotherhood that has formed between Narendra Modi and Donald Trump, 1/3 of every Indian American, almost 1/3 of every of all the Indian American voters, they are expected to vote for Donald Trump. That's the situation on the ground. And this is very important because in very crucial states like Florida, like Michigan, like Pennsylvania, there is a significant population of Indian Americans and they might be the critical vote when it comes to the final vote share. That's Indian Americans. But who are we rooting for in India? Who is the government of India rooting for? Who are the analysts rooting for? Who are the trade pundits rooting for? Is it Donald Trump? Is it Joe Biden? Who are the defense experts rooting for? Now, there are a lot of aspects I can take. For the sake of space and time, I'll dwell into 3 of them, starting with China. Now, interestingly, for both the United States and India, ties with China are at an all-time low. There has not been a worse time for diplomatic relationships between India and China as for what we saw in Galwan in June. The United States have just had signed a trade pact in January, and in February, COVID took over the entire narrative. In fact, Donald Trump has not shied away from saying that what has impacted America is a Chinese virus. Even his staunchest supporters are now coming out and saying that there's nothing enough the president could have done. But the common enemy in all this is in China. Now, just a week ago, we had the 2+2 dialogue. We had Secretary Mike Pompeo here. And one can really see the confidence India has in probably the bipartisan foreign policy the United States is expected to practice. There was agreements signed. The last of the agreements was signed. Now, last of the 3 of the defense agreements was rather signed. And there was also talk of cooperation for a free and open Indo-Pacific. But most importantly, it was the Quad that was in question, the formalization of the Quad. Now, I did a video merely a week or 10 days ago discussing the importance of the Quad. I'll put that link also in the description, where Australia has agreed to be a part of the Malabar naval exercise, which will happen in Bay of Bengal and then in the Arabian Sea. But a Trump administration, a Trump comeback could further add to the formalization of the Quad. Mike Pompeo has already stated that he would want more nations to come in because there are other nations who have stakes in the Indo-Pacific. So more formalization of the Quad could be expected if Trump comes into play. What happens if Biden comes in? Now, Biden has said that he'll go tougher on China as compared to Trump, but he'll take the less confrontational route, he said. He even wrote in an article in Foreign Affairs that Trump's way of handling China wasn't something he was going to follow, though China was also on one of his top agendas. Now, this ambiguity with respect to how Biden might treat the Chinese will only lead to benefit for the Chinese, not for India. The Indians would want a free and an Indo-Pacific, and they would want the formalization of the Quad, even though it was only the United States that made a direct reference to China in the 2+2 dialogue meeting that happened in Tokyo in September. What about the trade war? Now, a Trump 2.0, it will go heavy on China. There's little doubt about it. The victory of Trump would, one, validate the trade war. Many have criticized. Even Joe Biden has said that the trade war was ill-advised. It was a dent on the American middle class. But assuming Trump 2.0 happens, it will be a validation for the trade war. Now, in January 2020, a trade pact was signed, but that was January. A lot has happened in the last 10 months. Will Trump impose more tariffs? Will he push companies to move their supply chains out of China? He's expected to, because of the devastation the virus has wreaked in the United States, with more than 230,000 Americans dead. Now, who stands to gain if the supply chains move out of China? Of course, India. Now, Apple has already taken benefit of the production-linked incentive scheme, which is being announced in India. They have decided to move their production to India, rather increase their production in India. Other companies may follow suit, and other companies are also facing other challenges in China when it comes to intellectual property theft and the trade war and the tariffs and so on. A Biden administration, as is the case with any new administration, they would look to renegotiate the trade war with America. They would look to renegotiate the tariffs, which would give the companies the breathing space. Now, the Chinese, of course, stand to benefit, but India would want to make more benefits, it would like to gain more in this trade war. Now, lastly, if we talk about the defense ties, the second aspect is the defense ties between India and the United States. Now, there's little doubt that from 2008 to rather 2000, when the defense ties were not that big between India and the United States, the defense ties in 2020 stand close to $20 billion. The defense trade is around $20 billion between the two countries. Recently, we made some acquisitions also. Some orders were placed when Trump was here for the Apache helicopters, the P-8s, and so on. The defense pacts which have been signed, the three of them, one of them was made operational very recently when India wanted high altitude systems for its soldiers as it prepares for a very long winter against China in the Ladakh sector. 11,000 of them were demanded, and the supply is being promised. Then there was a second procurement that was cleared for 72,000 assault rifles that will come from the United States. The first procurement happened in 2019. So more or less, under the Trump regime, defense ties have only expanded between the India and the United States. Now, what happens if Biden comes in? Well, for one, they would obviously want to sell weapons to India, but there is also the problem of the groups that may plague or may have an influence on the Biden administration. Already, many close to Biden have criticized India's stance in Kashmir. They have criticized the revoking of Article 370. They have criticized the NRC in Assam. They have criticized the CAA and its implementation. So, if the moral imperatives of the Biden administration comes in way of the defense ties, that could be a huge problem for the Indian government. Already, if you go to Joe Biden's page on his campaign website, and if you look at what he stated for the Muslim American community, he says that he's not certainly happy about the revoking of Article 370, of the Assam NRC, of the CAA. So the question of moral imperatives will obviously remain if we have a Democratic president in the Oval Office. For Republicans, it's always business as usual. So while the bipartisan foreign policy may continue, India may have to suffer a dent when it comes to the trade relationship between the two countries. The third aspect, H-1B visas. Now, H-1B visas, the recent changes that have been announced by the Department of Labor and Department of Homeland Security, they pertain to the wages. So, to skip the bureaucratic mumbo-jumbo, earlier, lower wages could guarantee you an H-1B visa, but now America only wants to invite high-paying workers under the H-1B visa regime. Now, this is going to be a problem for a lot of IT companies. It's going to add to the financial burden. It's also going to act as a deterrent to other companies having H-1B workers. It's going to have an impact on the existing H-1B workers and their families. It's going to be problematic, and Trump has been very clear from day one, since his campaigning days in 2016, that he wants to bring back the jobs to the United States. Now, what has Biden done on that front? Biden has also endorsed the changes that have been made to the H-1B visa structure with respect to the wages I just spoke about. So even if any other president comes, even if Biden comes or Trump comes, the H-1B concerns are going to remain. Now, a Democratic president or a Republican president more mindful to the concerns of the Silicon Valley, because a lot of companies like Google, Microsoft, even Apple and Amazon, they have voiced the concerns against this changing H-1B visa regime, because it then creates a problem for them when it comes to hiring cheap labor. If any of the president is mindful of the concerns voiced by these companies together with the Indian government, because India gets 3/4 of the allocation when it comes to H-1B visa, 75% of the H-1B visas go to Indian workers, then you perhaps could have some changes in the H-1B visa regime, but it won't make a difference which president is in the Oval Office. It will only depend on who wants to negotiate really, and it's a very long shot when it comes to H-1B. Now, lastly, the question of Kamla Harris. Everyone was pretty excited 2-3 months ago when Kamla Harris was announced as the vice president for the Biden campaign. Now, we have discussed in an elaborate fashion. I'll again also put that link in the video, in the description. We have discussed that Kamla Harris is not all for India. She recognizes herself more as an African American more than an Indian American. She has made her stance clear on Kashmir on 370, and it's not something that India would endorse. She also criticized the foreign minister when he refused to meet one of the congresswomen when she wanted to endorse a resolution criticizing the revoke of Article 370. So together, Biden and Harris combination, it will raise more questions for India than solving problems. And India would also know this. However, having said that, India must keep an open mind, because you never know if the pollsters are right this time, if they're not wrong for the second time in a row, and they must have learned from their mistakes. If Biden comes back, or if Biden rather has his first time and Trump doesn't come back, India must have a plan to tackle the new administration to keep the relationship going. And at the same time, it can only wish that the friend of India, Donald Trump, stages a comeback to the White House, which for now, according to the forecast, looks a long shot. Thank you.